Many know that we do tuning, and a lot of people know we do engine builds here. But what you may not know is that most of what we do is really hands-on. We do cylinder head work, it's all by hand, we don't have a CNC. CNCs are great, actually. You get consistent shape and consistency across everything if the head casting is consistent. The mod motors, the Coyotes, have even the same generation of head, the same casting, left to right are two different castings, so we get some unique core shift. I should have shown before we did any bowl work here, but essentially this left to right head had core shift. I mean, a lot of times you see core shift going this way. You can correct that pretty easily with the CNC. I mean, you can correct everything with the CNC if you go big enough. That's the thing about the CNC, which I love. You just can't go small and high flow. So when you want to keep it as small as possible and as high flow as possible, it's difficult with the CNC because most people want, when they get a CNC port, they want everything CNC'd and absolutely beautiful. On a cast head like this, that means you're going big. You have to account for the core shift of heads that are core shifted this way, this way, this way, and this way. So the ports get bigger just so everything's cut. We do work with Brett Barber at Airflow Solutions, and our program that he runs for us does not cut. For instance, the floor on the intake cuts the roof, and it works quite well. You don't need to have everything cut. In this head here, we're doing bowl and chamber work. That's where the bulk of the gains are going to be. Chamber work is extremely difficult, and there's a certain way that we do things, and a lot of people, I think there's a lot of porting videos out there, but to stay consistent, what we do here is we just cut one part of each, let's say part of each of these chambers here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, keep it the same cut across, then we switch to the other head and do it again. That way we do basically the same cut 8 times, and you can go back and look at it and say, okay, this one you got a little bit too much, I gotta match it with all the others, or a little bit less. But we do that just to keep everything as consistent as possible, because doing things by hand, it is extremely difficult to keep it consistent across all 8 cylinders, especially if you decide, like, the rookie move is to port this hole completely, then move on to this one. By the time you get to number 16, you're pretty tired, and you may have cut one more on this side over here and don't even realize it. So there's a lot of moving the heads back and forth, and we try to keep it as easy as possible. Another thing is a lot of people use air die grinders or big electric ones. I'm not a fan of either. I've used them. We've got this Fordham unit, which is actually not very expensive. It's 1/4 horsepower with a flexible line. And then you can pick out the handheld. They have multiple different handhelds. So you can pick out just the size that you want. They've got shorties, they've got longer ones, they've got thicker ones. This is one of them that I like. It's a little different than my other one. And then of course all of your carbides, all of your bits, you got long bits, different styles, different cuts, different shapes, honestly, and then different lengths, right? Shorty. And the short give you really, you can lay into them on a short one. You can really put some force in there. I don't use the shorties much anymore. Once you get used to the length and controlling it without having it, vibrate all over the place, it's pretty cool. Another thing that, I like it. In this case, I can keep the tool away from the head when I'm cutting over here, right? I need to support it properly, but I don't have this key like digging into the head here if I'm trying to go really short, or in the chamber, right? If I had a short one like this, right? I'd be, the handheld would be really in the chamber. So it's just whatever tools work for you. This is just what I like. And the Fordham, you can adjust the speed once you get the cutting speed that you want with the flutes. So depending on the cutter that you're using, the size and the flute depth, you can set the different speed. It will cut at a different rate. Sometimes you get a vibration in the cuts. Sometimes you get really clean cuts. Sometimes it won't cut at all, depending on the speed. And you can just fine tune it real cool. Lubrication of the bit so it doesn't get dull. A lot of different stuff out there. I've always used wax. So this can, if you use too much, it'll build up in here. You just take a torch and burn it off and then put more wax on it. It keeps the bits good for a pretty good length of time. I'm gonna go ahead and just cut and show you how quick it is to do one little section at a time and how easy it is to keep consistent. Hopefully I don't, scrape the deck. Honestly, after you've done any cutting, you're gonna need a valve job and a deck. This is a factory head, brand spanking new. The deck is not really that great anyways. So we were gonna deck it anyway. So if I get it, I'm not concerned. I haven't nicked any seats at all, cutting the bowls, but it's inevitable and don't worry about it really. You can protect them. A lot of guys will put valves in here, spare valves. I find that I can't get close. The whole point of doing the chambers is not only to get rid of the sharp edges, which these don't really have, and the shape is actually pretty good on these. The whole point is to unshroud that valve. So when you have very low valve lift, the airflow can move without hitting a ridge. So on these, you got a nice ridge. It's not even that bad on the Gen 3s compared to other heads. But these are very low lift cams and small valves. So when you unshroud the valve, compared to a large, like a 202 valve head or 208 valve head, you get, and with the short cams, the short lift cams, you get actually quite a bit of increased airflow. We have seen 40 horsepower on a 1200 horsepower car. So if you do the math, that's pretty good gains from just unshrouding the valves and polishing the chambers. It's not really a polish, you can polish, but the airflow doesn't, we can debate rough, smooth. Typically we go as smooth as possible for looks, not necessarily for, on a chamber you don't want any sharp edges, of course, hot spots, whatever. Let me go ahead and show you how it's done. So I use this setup. I've got a plastic table. I've got wood underneath. I don't, just to make sure it's fairly stable. There's not a lot of pressure I'm putting on these things. I've got my light, move around, and I have a stool that's adjustable in height. In this case, I've got it at an angle where I can hit what I'm gonna hit. I have to stand up to do it. So we can adjust the speed. You can hear it. That's slow. And then really fast. Right about there is where I like this particular bit. It's egg shaped. You get used to certain bits, you just get a feel for it. You do got to get a feel for it, honestly. You got to figure out which bit shape you like for your particular job. So I'm just going to unshroud one spot on the intake side here. I believe, yeah, I've already done that head. That's actually it. By doing it one little section at a time, I'm sure you're moving things off, but I get my bit I get my bit at the same angle and I'm supporting it in the same way. I've got the same speed on every single piece. So I know that what I've cut over here is pretty much identical to over here. Instead of coming back and trying to do this chamber and then this chamber and then this chamber, you know, this is the way you do it. So then you just move this head off. Let me check this head over here. Yeah, I've done this intake. So I've done on this chamber, I've done this part here and this part here, and I've done it on the sister head over there. So now I'm just gonna flip this around and start again. And then once I get a couple of pieces done, I'll switch heads. Just lay the head down. Now I'm ready to go for right here. Here. Then I'll pull this off and I'll do the other head. And then start over here. So I'll probably switch these heads out to do the chambers. Each piece of this chamber, you know, I kind of like I divide it up into 4 sides of each port. So you have 8. I'll be switching this out 8 times pretty easily, back and forth, just to do the rough cut. And this is the rough cut. So this is a multi-flute. It's great for aluminum as long as it's sharp. Once they're not sharp, send them out to get sharpened. And then we'll start sanding, same way. And then we'll move on to the cross buffs. So there's multiple different grits. And depending on your cross buffs, depending on the aluminum material, and depending on how rough this cut will determine which sandpaper grit you want to go with. Sometimes you'll have to use 2 different ones and go over it twice. And then you move on to the cross buffs. This is the fine cross buff. It's kind of worn out. It's got some life. I mean, it fits right in there. But it's tedious work. Takes a bit of time. Definitely takes some skill. But that's how it's done. Practice on a junk set of heads. Practice on your own stuff, whatever. You can get this Fordham for like $400. The handhelds, believe it or not, are like 50, 60 bucks. So even if it wears out, and they take a while to wear out, it's not that much to replace. I mean, some of these bits are more expensive than the damn handheld. Anyways, thought I'd give you a good eye view of what we do here, aside from building and tuning.